Hi there, friends. I'm Scott Wakefield, lead pastor at First Christian Church of Greene County, and I am with
Chuck Bowlin.
And we're going to have a coffee convo. Awkward pause. There we go. Coffee Convos is an opportunity to have a good convo with some good friends, and Chuck Bowlin counts. I think you have to be a good friend to be an elder at First Christian Church. So Chuck qualifies, and so we're going to get to hear about the work of God in his life and get to know him a little bit tonight. So we're glad you joined us. Friendly reminder, this is live. So jump in the comments, let us know you're here. And if you're a Bowlin or somehow related to Chuck, or perhaps you work for Chuck, then in particular, please jump in and help us ask questions.
What did I tell you about questions for my wife?
Chuck forewarned me and said something like, I'll be able to discern which questions are my wife in particular. So I'll filter those out if needed.
Pass.
Pass. Yes, you do have carte blanche to pass on whatever. So we're glad you joined us. Let's jump in. Tell us, Chuck, who are you? How did you get to today? Where are you from? Tell us about your family, all that kind of stuff.
All right. Well, I was raised in Waldorf, Maryland, which a lot of people don't know, so I'm not a local, but I've been in Tennessee for, 35 years now. Came down...
35 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
So doing the math, when I was 18, I moved down here.
Okay.
53 now. Went to Tennessee Tech, which was an intentional way just to get away from Maryland. I always came down to my dad's family and visited during the summers in Hilton's, Virginia.
That's right. Yeah.
So really liked the South better than where I was from, and so moved down to Tennessee and worked on an engineering degree at Tennessee Tech. It was a good time of growth for me, get to kind of redefine myself and decide what I wanted to be. And
you went in thinking engineering.
I did.
Tennessee Tech.
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
Stuck it out. Had to lay out a school year just to get my residency so I could afford to stay in school. But 5-year program, got out and went to Chattanooga from there. My wife.
That's right. Yes.
Met my wife in college through the University Christian Student Center that I was involved in there. And actually was roommates with one of her, I think both of her brothers at different points. But her family's from outside of Chattanooga in Grundy County.
So her family was vetting you from the very beginning, as it turned out.
I guess so. I don't know how I made it through that, but so I got to meet most of her family before I met her.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Anyway.
Take a note, y'all. That's how it should be right there. That's good. That's. I'm going to remember that. Yeah, go ahead.
She started at David Lipscomb and ended up transferring to Tennessee Tech. And
okay.
So we got married while we were still in school. I had a year left.
Math major?
She was.
Or education? Or yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Math, secondary education, math.
All right.
And I actually ended up teaching for a few years in Chattanooga at a private school there.
Cool.
So we settled in Chattanooga. Ended up living there 10 years, had a couple of kids while we were there, involved in various churches, and just never felt like home to me. And I guess God made it uncomfortable enough for me that started looking for other options.
Yeah.
And so...
what do you think was, looking back, what do you mean by made it uncomfortable for you?
Well, I guess initially I felt like a 30-year plus career where I started was kind of what I was expecting.
And you were thinking that way? Straight
out of college. I mean, I thought, I'll be here, really, which in this world is kind of unusual, and that didn't stick. But, like I said, my work situation became a little uncomfortable, and looking back, I don't think that was accidental.
Yeah.
And it made me start looking, and it was interesting, one of the stories that kind of where I see God working in my life. So I had a cousin that lived here in Greeneville. And so we'd come up and visit, and I told my wife one day, I said, Greeneville, it seems like a community I'd like to retire to someday. She said, well, her idea of retiring is to live in a place you love all your life and retire there. I said, you're right, let's move.
Oh, really?
So
that's cool.
We started visiting churches up here, and one of the churches we visited, just conversation with folks, somebody come up and say, well, what are you doing visiting? I said, well, just thinking about moving to the area, just wanted to get to know people.
I've heard some of this before. Yeah.
And so he left, and he comes back and brings the general manager of the power company, who basically interviews me on the spot.
And you had been working in Chattanooga at the utility there, right?
I had been working there at the time, probably about 8 years.
Okay.
And he basically said, sounds like you would be perfect for an opportunity I may be having coming up. Stay in touch.
Okay.
And so I did for a couple of years. And I walked out, told my wife, I said, that's Providence at work, and just felt good about it. And in due time, it worked out, and moved here and had a couple more kids. We've had 4 children. It's been a great place to raise a family.
Yeah. Was that Bill?
That was.
Yeah.
That was.
And here we are.
Yep. So, like I said, we had 2 kids in Chattanooga, Charlie and Casey, my oldest 2, who are now 24 and 22. And then David was born. He's 19, and Jonathan is 14, almost 15.
It's crazy.
Since we've been here. So
yeah. You are becoming an old man.
I am. I'm starting to feel it.
And you have kids who are adults, kids who are not kids, and almost all your kids are practically adults. Let's talk about that some. What for you? And here's where I'm thinking about this. When our first kid goes off to college, there's some switch that happened, and I suddenly had a more keen awareness of, oh no, I didn't do this well, or there wasn't enough of this, or I failed in this way, and I suddenly realized, oh no, I've lost all that time. She's gone now. What for you has been some of the transition for you and your wife and your marriage and your family personally, from going from having young kids who are all a part of your house to now having some kids who are out?
Well, I mean,
I know that wasn't on the list of questions we sent you beforehand.
My experience has been a little bit different because all of my kids to this point have stayed at home during their college time. Yeah. And for me, I guess Charlie, and I had to kind of twist his arm to go to college. He kind of did that to appease us, get his 2-year degree, but now he's working on being a lineman, and I'm proud as can be of him. But I remember for him, it really didn't even hit me until he said, well, Dad, this is it. I'm moving out, getting married. And, it started, suddenly hit me. Oh, it's over. It's gone. He's on his own. And, I guess for me, it was just a sense of pride. That he was the man he is. Yeah. And, has settled with the good woman that he's got, Hannah. Mm-hmm. So, Casey, it was too quick to think about. She was, of course, last year she got married, and it was initially planning on getting married around Memorial Day weekend. Well, COVID kind of settled in.
Oh, yes, that's right.
She's coming to the point, deciding whether to send invitations out or not.
Yeah.
And we said, why don't you just get married? And so that was like on a Monday or Tuesday, and I think she got married that Friday or Saturday, just a few days later. So because they were just waiting for a date.
Yeah. So, I've seen a number of things that, because of COVID, pressed more immediately or delayed a number of things like that, and weddings were one of the numbers of things on that list that changed a lot of those plans.
Yeah, and I think it worked out great. Just took a lot of stress away, but and she just moved out, and that was it. And then Jonathan wrote his little song about getting ready to be lonely at home by himself. Two older ones are gone, and David's about to go off to college. I'll be here all by myself. And so it starts sinking in. We're about to be empty nesters.
Tell the folks who don't know what you're talking about a little more about what you're talking about with the.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, Casey, it kind of happened quicker than we were all thinking. She got married and she's gone. Yeah. And I think Jonathan comes home and he. It kind of hits him. Oh, 2 of my siblings are gone, and one of them's getting ready to go to college, and I'm going to be here all by myself. Yeah. And he wrote a song in like 20 minutes and started playing it, and it was a pretty neat little song, but it kind of gave us some insight into what he's thinking. Yeah. So
let's talk about your family throughout and your marriage throughout and your work throughout, but a little more about you specifically. We've got a couple questions here. What are some hobbies you have that people may not know about, or some things about you that may not know?
I've got way too many hobbies.
Yes, I was going to say you have projects.
Yeah. So, I mean, I always like outdoor things.
Uh-huh.
I've been a hunter. I've hunted deer and turkey for decades, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I got into gardening and farming more as I moved to Greeneville and had a little bit of property to play with. And I've got a farm in Virginia. Part of it came to me through my family, and part of it I bought that I maintain. And just, it's my getaway place where I just enjoy spending time.
Uh-huh.
I like woodworking. I like beekeeping. Fishing, camping, going on a little adventure with my boys this summer to Oregon.
Oh, yeah?
Doing a rafting trip on
Cool.
the river for a few days. I'm going to take my son-in-law as well, and my
Nice.
brother and his son, and just a little
Nice.
family time away. And
Yeah.
going to camp and just along the way, just wherever we can find. So
That's cool. So basically, you do anything outdoorsy.
pretty much,
And so basically, you and I are totally the opposite people.
exactly.
Exactly. I am not what you call outdoorsy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to.
You're the extrovert. I'm the introvert.
That's true. I'm not going to shrivel up and die, but and I could survive and all that. But yeah, let me be inside with some books and people. And you are more introverted than I, naturally. Would you say? And I think I know the answer. Would you say you are more introverted, and your wife Tammy is more extroverted, generally?
Not really. I think we're both introverted.
Okay.
She might be a little bit more outgoing than me, but
Okay.
but we're both introverts.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't have guessed that.
Yep.
But I sit corrected. Would you say more thinker or feeler for you? Thinker or feeler?
You know the answer to that.
I know the answer, but
thinker.
our audience may not be as aware.
See, that's how I'm going to know some of the questions that you get in. If instead of asking about my feelings, I'm going to say, that's Tam.
Tell us, let's delve into that. So you're definitely a thinker more than a feeler.
Yes.
Yes. Analytical type of thinker, or an idea abstract thinker?
Analytical.
Yeah, that's what I would say from having to guess. Yeah, I'm an abstract idea kind of guy. And I think I'm a thinker a smidge less than I am a feeler. But I've learned to verbalize things and analyze things in ways that thinkers identify with. But I don't think I'm naturally a thinker.
Yeah.
I probably should have said I feel like I'm actually a feeler as opposed to I think I'm a... Okay, this isn't about me. This is about you. So are you a... and I'll answer this first because, of course, in good leadership principles, the leader answers first to make sure that those who are around know that it's safe to answer. Are you a fighter or a peacemaker in your marriage? And I'm a fighter, and my wife is also a fighter.
Yeah, well, I'm the fighter and she's the peacemaker.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And yeah, she's a natural peacemaker all the way around. I like to think I start as a peacemaker, but back me in a corner and I'm a fighter pretty quick. So
Yeah. How's that come out some in your marriage, and in what kinds of ways? And every way.
she had to learn to deal with conflict, I guess, after she got married to me, and I had to learn to not be so quick to have conflict, I guess. So
Yeah. I'm tracking, because that's definitely the same for us. Because even though, in a sense, I said both my wife and I are fighters, I think she didn't start that way in our marriage.
Yeah.
She was definitely an avoider of conflict and more of a peacemaker, and anything I could do avoid it. Well, then she found her voice, and suddenly it's like the tables have sort of turned a little bit.
yeah, it took her a while to find her voice.
Not totally. I apologize, Dagny. That's not the case. So, yeah. How long have you guys been married?
Be 31 years this month.
31 years. What do you say to those who are not 30-ish years into their marriage? What kind of advice would you give to those who are younger about marriage?
Wow.
Married or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess looking back, what kind of advice I wish I'd have had at that age. Just don't take yourself so serious. Chill out. Don't be a control freak.
Yeah.
This is the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. Treat them like an angel.
Are those lessons for you in particular that you feel like you've learned and needed to learn, and that marriage has?
Yeah, those are things I just had to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
That I wish I had not been so slow to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, it's really easy and I mean, you said something about how you and I are opposites in some of these ways, which is true. But at the same time, I can tell you take things serious because they're worth taking seriously, because life matters and this isn't a game. However, I like you, I think I took way too much, way too seriously, too early.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not everything has to be a fight, and it's not worth it all the time. And in fact, it's often better to.
You're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Are you talking to me or are you talking about us?
Us.
Yeah. That's good. Another question came in that said, "Tell us about the time you got stung on the lip."
Oh. That's Nathan, right?
That is Nathan. That's coming from in this studio right now.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Just last year, part of beekeeping, every once in a while you get stung, and I get hit right on the lip, and it swelled up felt like a softball, but
Yeah.
it wasn't pretty. So, as a joke, I sent Nathan a picture. He wanted a picture to post for this, and I sent him a picture of that. How's this one?
Yeah.
Thankfully, he didn't post
We're
that.
sparing the audience.
I'm afraid to see where that's going to come up, though.
Yes. You probably never should have sent that in the first place. How often do you get stung?
Regularly.
Yeah.
I mean, weekly.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
And
So
you just learn to
I
deal with
assume
it.
you're not allergic?
Nope, don't
That
believe
you-
so.
Yeah. So let's talk about you being an elder, being in church, being a spiritual faith leader, and your own story of coming to faith. Looking back, you've been a Christian probably, because I know some of your story, as long as you can remember back. Tell us some about those influences for you. Who are some mentors or some especially germane moments for you that are part of your faith journey?
So, and I didn't get into much of that in my intro, but I was raised by Christian parents.
Yeah.
But they came from different faith backgrounds. My dad was from the mountains of Southwest Virginia.
Particular Baptist.
Primitive Baptist.
Primitive, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Particularly
Not
primitive.
quite the same, but close to the same, yes.
Yeah. And my mom was from a Churches of Christ background.
That's right.
And of course, in Maryland, there's not too many primitive Baptists, and the Churches of Christ probably aren't the most comfortable place for a primitive Baptist to be. So it was a little uncomfortable for my dad, and so he struggled with adapting to that. But we were in church, all growing up, and and I guess I came to Christ or decided to be baptized when I was 14.
Okay.
And it was coming up through a works-based theology. There was more fear involved in that decision than I wish there had been. And so, feeling like there was, a dependence on myself and doing these certain things to have salvation. More of a fear of hell than a wanting to be a servant of Christ.
Yeah.
And so, that's something that I really grew out of in college years, getting involved with the University Christian Student Center at Tennessee Tech, and largely through my wife's father, my father-in-law now, who's since passed, but had a big influence on me in helping me to understand grace and salvation being grace, and really, I started to experience the freedom that comes with that. So that was a big time of growth for me through college. And I was one of the leaders at the Christian Student Center there through my college years, and, until I got married and kind of had to separate from that a little bit. But it's a good time of life. So then we continued as we moved to Chattanooga, and we've always been real involved with churches all along.
Yeah. Tell us about your work. What do you do? What's your role there? For folks who may not know.
So I work presently at Greeneville Light Power. I've worked there for almost 20 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, I worked prior to coming here, I worked at the power company in Chattanooga. Started here as an engineer, worked in our meter department for a while, then became over operations and engineering, And then last year when Bill Carroll retired, I was moved into the CEO role.
And in case you're not wrapping up this loop that he was talking about earlier, Bill was the one at the church that you all were visiting before even coming and hadn't been employed, and he's the one who said, hey, there may be something available for you.
Right.
Yeah. Cool stuff. Yeah. So you've been there 20-ish years now?
Be 20 in June, or the 1st of July, I guess.
Yeah, cool. Give us some stats and a scope, a sense of the scope of what GLPS manages and in charge of, how many substations, what the power looks like, and some of some color to that people like me who don't know things would be interested to know. Yeah,
well, and a lot of people don't care about it really, but
sure, until the lights go up.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I always used to tell people when they ask me what I do, well, I keep the lights on.
Yeah.
And you do the things day to day that leads to that. So we actually buy all of our power from TVA.
Okay.
And so 80% or so of what you spend every month goes straight through us to TVA. So we manage on the 20% or so that's left.
Yeah.
And we have, you were asking about numbers of substations. I think we have 30 substations now.
30?
4 of which are delivery points where we get power from TVA.
Okay, so those 4 are where TVA sends it.
Correct.
And it goes there, okay.
So then we take it from there, and we own all of the sub-transmission, the 69,000 volt lines that come to our distribution stations, and then turn it into 13,000 volts, take it all throughout the county until it gets to your house, and drop it down to 120, 240, or whatever your business needs. So we've got just short of 40,000 customers.
Okay.
One of the largest counties in the state, so we serve
I wondered if it was, because geographically, we're not small.
Yeah, I've heard different things at different times. I think maybe the 6th largest, but anyway, we serve all of Greene County and just very small pieces around the fringe.
Really?
So not much, but just a little bit over the county lines in places. So, that's the gist of it. It's about $100 million
in overall per year, or what?
In plant value.
In plant value, okay.
Yeah.
So when you said those 4 stations, are those owned by y'all, or is that TVA?
So we own those 4 stations.
Okay.
Now, TVA has portions of those stations that they own, but there's a dividing point, and we own the transformers that take it from the 161,000 volts that they bring it to us and turns it into what we use.
I'll not try to bore everybody, because I'm interested in a whole bunch of details about all that kind of stuff that probably most folks aren't. But what has changed with GLPS, at least, for example, and in managing power in the last 20? Well, you've been in the industry for 30-ish years now.
Mm-hmm.
What's changed in the industry? What's changed for how we do things here in terms of power management?
Well, I guess technology's hitting all aspects of life, and so it's hit the power industry as well. And so a lot of things that used to be electromechanical are now digital. And so the communications aspect and the data that we can get in and the amount of control that we have remotely over our system is continually increased. Meter reading is one example of that. We read all of our meters through the power lines.
Yeah.
And, we did that, I think, back in 2005.
It's
maybe
been a while.
2007, somewhere in that range.
Was that an earlier than most folks in Tennessee or in our region transition for us, or is that a later than most folks?
That was earlier than most, and there's some that still don't have that, but
really?
Most of them do now.
Would that be smaller utilities that don't have?
In general, yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. Sorry, go ahead.
So, that's the biggest change. Generation is basically unchanged. How you create the
you mean electricity is fundamentally the same thing?
It's fundamentally the same, but and you still have the power lines and everything that's basically unchanged from 80 years ago.
Sure.
But the technology behind it and the communications and the
control of it,
aspects.
and are there a ton more metrics now of things that you know in real time that you wouldn't have been able to know as much before?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course, we read our meters 3 times a day, and so we know how much power is being used every hour on every account that we have.
How often would it have been before? Monthly, when the guy comes around?
Yeah, and you
Sorry,
go far
a
enough
person.
back, the person would read their own meter and send you in a ticket and say, here's how much I used. But that's been a while back. So things have changed in that vein.
When would typically people have read their own and send it in? How
Well,
long ago was that for?
I mean, it's probably been 30 plus years ago. And that would have been not necessarily all of the customers, but some on the fringe of the system, just to save the meter readers having to go out there.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So
That's cool. Huh. So your role is to oversee all of that. What have been some lessons for you in your life about leading at that kind of scale and level that you've had to learn to be effective at your job?
I don't know. I never really viewed myself as a leader until college, when other people started viewing me as a leader, and I became a leader at the Christian Student Center. And I thought, well, I guess I am. But I still had a lot to learn, and I still have a lot to learn.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
I mean, I don't know. I guess my leadership style has grown through the years.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think you can be a great leader unless you are secure in yourself. You have self-confidence. You know, I think trust is important in leadership, and just, you know, not micromanaging people, letting them trust you and you trusting them to do what they can do.
Yeah.
You know, I'm fortunate. I've got a great team of folks, and they make me look good.
How much of that for you? Because I've heard you say this kind of thing before, and especially that last part. That last part is what reminded me of some of the ways you've characterized this before. I've got a great team of people around me. I trust them to do their job well. They know how to do their job well. And that's a super important part of making it look like, man, Chuck Bowlin knows what he's doing and everything's going well here.
It hadn't always been like that. I remember when I started into this, and I was on the operations side, and over 80% of the company.
Right.
Every time a little cloud would roll by or a storm, I'm sitting here, calling in, is we having any trouble? And I realized, we've got good processes in place. We got good people. They're going to call you if they need you. Let it go.
Yeah.
And so it kind of helped me start letting go of things and trusting the processes and the people that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. How much of that trust in the people and the processes, as you said, was because you had been there helping build that and seeing that happen for 20 years? It has to be a key piece of that, your awareness of that.
Yeah, my knowledge of the people over time, and just, I guess my confidence growing in them, and just realizing how they can do it without me. And so when you put, good processes and good people in place, it should run without you.
Yeah. That was, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about how those who have gone before, the Bill Carrolls of the world, are people who have put these kinds of people and process in place. And I've thought about this a lot in ministry. We stand on the shoulders of countless people, in a sense, even at GLPS. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you were to try to tell the history of all the people who've been a part of building all this, you wouldn't have enough time.
Yeah.
And there would be tons of little pieces of that no one will ever be able to be aware of, which I know is kind of a silly way to characterize it, but it makes the point. None of us gets to where we are by ourselves.
On our own. That's right.
Yeah. Who have been some of those kinds of people for you, looking back? I mean, you mentioned your parents, of course, Bill Carroll, in a sense, in terms of work. And you can give more color to those as well. But who are some people for you who you stand on the shoulders of that you're aware of looking back?
Oh, from a work standpoint, I mean, there's names that you wouldn't even know. I mean, I started my career in Chattanooga, and just the foundations, the people that put confidence in me, and the training I got there, and then mm-hmm. coming here, and the great people that I got to work with here. I think a lot of my success, or whatever you want to call it, I like the people I work with. I'm an outdoorsman. Linemen are not your,
They're not sitting inside reading books like me.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
it's okay to make
that's
that
my
up.
kind of people.
Yeah.
I like them.
Right.
And I think that shows. They know that then I'm not fake. I'm not trying to use them.
You're one of them. They're one.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they'd claim me that close, but but they know that I've got their backs, and I can count on them.
Yeah. What are some characteristics of those people for you that you, looking back, people have been mentors, work, spiritually, family, whatever. What are the characteristics about them that you think have been especially helpful for you?
I don't know. That's a tough one.
Or that you value in mentors or people who have come before or other leaders.
Yeah.
And what makes for good leaders and mentors of others?
Well, there's several questions there.
Well, I was trying to give you some more handles and
trying to give me all kinds of time. I'm still struggling, Scott.
That's the problem with an abstract person like me. I'm going to add more things until you hook onto one of them.
I don't know. I remember one of the people that I worked with in Chattanooga that I just saw the way he interacted with people and the way he reaffirmed them and
was particularly
encouraged
encouraging.
them. Exactly. And I guess he was one of the mentors that kind of taught me a lot of leadership skills, or at least I tried to glean some things off of. There's plenty of others. It's just hard for me to come up with examples that ring out. Bill Carroll was always very good to me, and taught me a lot as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I often think, Scott, you need to be more of an encourager and more of a positive, see the work of God in other people kind of person. Looking back, as opposed to I can make these things happen by myself and come, well, heck or high water, who cares what everybody else is doing? You need to have people around you and encourage them in those ways.
Yeah, and that's not one of my strengths.
It's not for me either, but I try to be intentional about it.
I try to be as well, and because I know it's not one of my strengths, but I'd watched one of the previous coffee combos and saw where you'd asked about the disc profile, and so I went out and looked mine up. I forgot, it had been a while, so and that was one of the things where it said you can
work on that, or
I can work on being encouraging.
Yeah,
and
do you think for you that's because you see the things that are going on, you're like, well, this isn't working right, and we need to make sure we fix this because engineering types of minds.
I think it's probably a consistent thing with engineering types, decisive and analytical and can seem disconnected.
Can seem disconnected. But I'm not really, I promise. Cool. So we have more questions that I apparently have not been getting to. My apologies, people. You have so many hobbies, but which one is your favorite?
It just depends on when. I guess if I could be anywhere doing anything, I'd be on the farm, on the tractor, or working in my orchard or something like that.
To maintain the farm.
Yeah, just getting the peace that I get out of that and the enjoyment from just making things look good and developmental. I like working with my bees this time of year. It's really keeps me busy. So that's another thing that's I really get enjoyment out of.
So it depends on the time of the year.
Yeah, bees kind of slow down a lot.
If it's hunting season or not.
Yeah.
What's needed on the farm.
Yep.
Yeah. So what kind of animals you got?
We've got dairy cows right now, just a few. I think we got 7. Got chickens, got peacocks, dogs and cats. We've had sheep in the past. Those were real good when the kids were young. Good to raise.
The idea of having more beings and creatures to take care of than my immediate 3 human beings and 2 canines, one of which is needing to go because 2 was one too many for me. But I love my family, therefore I put up with 2. The idea of having that many thoroughly paralyzes me.
Well, I've had 3 boys. Now they're graduating and getting through it, but they've done a lot for me. I get to just enjoy the labor of their work, the fruit of their work.
All right, so what's the most surprising or unexpected thing that has caused a power outage?
Most surprising?
The most typical, I think you've said, squirrels.
Squirrels are typical. We had a raccoon the other night before last. Snakes every once in a while.
Really?
Would get up on a transformer and cause you problems. Those are the unusual ones. The trees are the everyday deal. Car wrecks, weather.
Which is more? Which causes more power outages? Humans or the rest of creation?
The rest. I mean, as far as human-caused car accidents is the biggest thing. I mean, every once in a while we'll have a truck that's got its bed up and causes us breaks a pole or something. But animals are by far the biggest cause of power outages.
So most of what we experience as, flash and flicker or power outage kind of stuff is naturally occurring stuff.
It is, weather and animals. And you do remember that squirrel I brought.
I was going to say, this is where I was headed next also. Yes, we've experienced some of that. Chuck walks in someday and says, well, this is what did it. I'm like, whoa, okay.
We were in church that Sunday morning.
were.
Lights went out, and I
That's
went out, came back with the squirrel.
Yeah. And was that the Sunday? There were a couple of Sundays where the lights were out for a few minutes. And so we stopped doing the plugged in stuff and started taking out the hymnals and doing it old school. I think that was that one. That was a little more prolonged. Yeah.
I don't know. I stepped out.
Yes, you weren't there for it. We had some fun moments actually. And there was somebody, you may not have been there for this. There's somebody from the back who said, number, whatever, 465. And it was like, "Oh Canada" or some ridiculous song that we would never sing as a worship song. What has been one of your favorite parts of leading as an elder at FCC? You've been an elder for quite a few years now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And seeing progress, seeing change, seeing growth.
Yeah.
And you maybe remember my early years and some of my, I guess growth stages is trying to be a leader in that.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
and I felt like I was, at the time, and even now, but especially at the time, effective in getting things changed. And at the time, the big thing was getting a worship minister and going to 2 services.
Yeah.
And, that was a conversation probably for years.
I was going to say, we worked for years
But
on things that now we would say, hey, let's take a few measurements on the dashboard of resource ability and discuss it. And it's not like we wouldn't discuss it. We would discuss it as elders, and even the staff and key leaders would be a part of that discussion over weeks and months. But we would say, let's do this, and it would happen. As opposed to 3 years. 3 years.
I remember when that
lots of
came to
work.
fruition, and you were kind of in a daze, and I can't believe this just happened.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
Seeing lots of the changes over time.
But the changes in positive ways, and the growth that's come from that.
Yeah.
Taking faith steps and
Indeed.
seeing the growth.
Good stuff. What have you done to invest in and train your kids? Another elder, you can probably name him, asking this as a part of the biblical view of what an elder is as head of home.
I've had a parenting philosophy. I'll go there.
Yeah.
I want my kids to know. I've always just want them to know that I love them unconditionally.
Absolutely.
They can't do anything to keep me from loving them.
That's right.
But I also want them to know that when Dad speaks, they're going to do something. I mean, I expect a response.
Yeah.
Something's going to happen.
Sure.
And that if they don't treat their mother with respect, they're going to answer to me.
That's right.
And so, kind of those 3 things. And I've always spent time with my kids, especially my boys. Not exclusively, but more so.
Yeah.
And
which I don't think is crazy. I mean, I spend lots of times with our 2 girls, but it's sometimes a little different. And I've noticed recently, you just made me think of this. I've been feeling like, because Alden is a sophomore and he's gone soon, I'm like, got to put more time in with teaching to be a man.
Yes.
Because my wife can't do that. And that sounds in our, weird world today. Saying something like that to some folks may sound like, ooh, well, you're, being preferential. Well, actually, I'm showing my son how to be a man, and that takes more time. And it's a unique role that my wife can't do.
Yeah. And
just
I've not had to sit down and say, here's what being a man is,
right.
But just being with him and spending time with him and teaching him.
Yeah.
Now, I've had the blessing of baptizing all 4 of my kids in the river out by my farm, and so that's some of the highlights of my life. But I love being with my kids, and hopefully they love being with me.
Yeah.
But I'm proud of all of them.
Indeed. Good kids, indeed. Speaking of good kids and family, here is your wonderful and lovely wife asking.
Pass.
Pass. You have gotten yourself and others into some uncomfortable situations while hiking with you. This is a softball. What is one of the scariest predicaments you have found yourself in?
Scariest predicaments while hiking? She probably remember them better than me. They weren't as scary to me as they might have been to other people.
Perhaps that's why she's asking the question.
Well, she's probably thinking of, we went to Yosemite a few years back, and you've got to have a permit to go up to Half Dome.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Well, we didn't have a permit, but we were just going to walk up to some of the waterfalls that led up to there.
Okay.
So we got about halfway up to Half Dome to those waterfalls. And
Quarter Dome.
Yeah, Quarter Dome, whatever you want. And she started having conversation, being the outgoing person she is, with some other folks. And well, they happened to have a couple extra passes. They said, "You want to go?" I said, "Hey, I'm up for it if you are."
Yeah.
Well, so we start going. Well, I'm carrying all the drinks and food and stuff, and me and the guy get a little further ahead, and that got a little precarious by the time she caught up with me, but we'll save that story. But anyway, we get all the way up to Half Dome, and I've got some pictures I can show you later where basically I'm dragging her the last several hundred meters. But we're in a cloud, and it starts raining, freezing rain.
Oh, my.
And this Half Dome is just a big granite rock.
Yeah.
And it's just turning into an ice skating rink, and people are trying to come off of this thing down these cables and steps, and I'm catching them, and I'm set on getting to the top of this thing despite the weather, but finally reason prevailed, and I thought, nobody else is coming down. What do I have to gain from this?
I'm catching them.
Yeah.
Is someone going to have to catch me?
So anyway,
Reason prevailed.
that was a tough week for both of us, but it was good memories.
Nice. That's cool. So you didn't slide down Half Dome, but you thought about it.
There was actually, I would have got up there if it hadn't. I started up, and we started hearing people yelling for help off the side of this thing. And you couldn't see them because we were in basically a cloud.
Oh, my.
And so I had to go back down and basically help guide them back up the side of this slippery rock to safety.
Wow.
And that took 20 or 30 minutes, and by that time it just got dangerous. So
Yeah. That is I think she used the word predicament. That is a scary predicament.
yeah, it was.
Someone who shall remain nameless who asked another question earlier.
Pass.
About have you ever castrated a pig? I'm going to guess the answer is
Yeah, everybody's got to try it once. I've got the video I can show you later.
I'm good. I'm good. I think we can pass on that part. If you're going to pass on questions, I'm going to pass on videos of castrating a pig.
Just go on YouTube. You can learn anything.
Well, careful what you ask YouTube to show you. Let's close with a couple questions about what you're excited about, what you're learning, what's God teaching you. What are you seeing in the Word lately? What's God teaching you? Those kinds of things.
Well, I'm excited about having grandkids. I told my kids they're all responsible for 4 apiece, and none of them getting started yet. Charlie's been married for almost 3 years here. What's the deal?
Be fruitful and multiply. It's the first command to people in Genesis.
Yeah, I'm still excited about that. But as far as what the Word's teaching me lately, of course we've been in Galatians, and grace is something that you continue to get a grasp on over
Yeah.
time, and just continuing to understand how little, I have to do with my own salvation, and how dependent I am on the grace of God.
Yeah.
And so that's been something that's been, good to be reaffirmed through our study in Galatians here lately.
Good. Yeah.
So,
I've been thinking a lot about that too. I mean, obviously, I'm the main preacher of that series here, but I was just thinking yesterday some about the extent to which the doctrines of grace for us, and the idea that grace is not just this like generic thing we believe in, that God gives us his favor. It's the thing that actually helps us make it through the day. As an extension of the salvation that he gives us. So it's good stuff. It's very layered.
I'm excited about what's in the future for our church too. How blessing we can be to our community.
That's right. That's good. Yeah, I feel similarly about how you were talking about as an elder, and how many years do you think you've been an elder here total?
6, maybe 7, something like that. I mean, I think I'm on year 5 now, and I was a couple of years earlier.
Yeah, you were before and now. Okay, all right. That sounds, over the years, as we see things grow and people, and by things grow, what we mean is people, I think of, and I'm excited about the extent to which we can continue to have tentacles into making this community strong for those who come behind us. You mentioned your grandkids, and your grandkids, and what we do as a congregation. That's the same project of building people who are doing the work of the Lord around us in this community, and not just like by having children or going to church, but working in ways that are trustworthy, that are faithful, with integrity, with those that we're working with, whether they're under us. And you have, how many employees you got at GLPS?
85, something like that.
Whether it's 85 employees or like just the other people around you and you're not in charge of anybody, all of that stuff for us is so important. So thanks for actually being excited about a vision that's like that, and not just what can everybody do for me. Good stuff. Thanks for being here for the coffee convo.
Glad to be here.
I'm sorry, I'm partially lying. Mine is water tonight. It's typically decaf. He does have coffee, so I apologize, Tammy. He's going to be up till 1 a.m. tonight. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you're with us next week at 7:30.